My name is Matt Morgan. It's great to be here. And how many of you guys, by show of hands, are sports fans? Okay, so when you see something like this, do you get excited or what? Right? Come on, we got the Denver Broncos here, and so what I want to do here now. Imagine for a moment that not only do you have a Denver Bronco jersey here, but you also have an Oakland Raider jersey up here. I don't even have one because that would just be a sin, and so I just don't even do that. But imagine here for a moment, what's the goal of the relationship when two people wear a different jersey? You got the Oakland Raiders, boo, and we got the Denver Broncos, come on, right? What's the goal of the relationship when two people wear a different jersey? Go ahead. It's to fight. It's to win, right? By making someone else lose, and you will do whatever it takes to make sure that you win and they will lose. Now, imagine for a moment, what's the goal of the relationship when two people wear the same jersey? Yeah, it's teamwork. It's still to win, right? The goal is still to win, but to win together. You see, when you wear the same jersey, friends, it has a profound effect on the way you play the game. And we're not talking about football anymore, are we? This is key when it comes to relationship. With all kinds of relationships, whether it be a business relationship, a friendship, a marriage, a romantic relationship of any kind, this is the key mindset of communication. And today, as we talk about your move, and this is a decision that each and every one of us can choose, and in that mode, you will change your life and you will change your relationships. You know why? Because healthy relationships are what make life rich. And if you have a poor relationship, if you have a poor business partnership, if you have a poor friendship, if you have a poor marriage, you live in poverty, don't you? It's amazing because healthy relationships are what make life rich. This is so incredible. And when you begin in communication to be able to say, I am putting on the same jersey, it has a profound effect on the way you play the game. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to dive in to this entire concept of communication that will change every one of your relationships, because so many failed businesses, so many failed friendships, so many failed romantic relationships, so many breakdowns or so many breakups are because of a breakdown in relationship. It's a breakdown in communication. And so what if we could actually begin to learn some simple and yet profound tools that will change your life? And in fact, be able to see that these are things that come from the heart of God, and it will change everything in you. And so what we're going to see here is that I actually believe a fundamental philosophy that conflict, especially conflict, okay? Like, nobody likes conflict, okay? Unless you're kind of weird, right? Like, nobody likes conflict. But, like, we actually, all of us, conflict is something that we can grow in incredibly. In fact, there was a wise man who lived about 2,000 years ago. Perhaps you've heard of him. He once said these simple and yet profound words in Matthew 18, verse 15. He says this, here, check out the screen here. He says, if a brother or sister sins against you, just go, don't tell the person who hurts you, and gossip to every one of your friends about what your friend did to you. Oh, wait, it doesn't say that at all. What does it say? If a brother or sister sins against you, put on a different jersey, drop kick him, punch him in the throat, and make him wish he never will do something like that to you again. Somebody who's like, preach it, right? It's not what he's saying. What does he say? If a brother or sister sins against you, just stuff it. Take off the jersey. Just walk off the field. Shove it under the rug. Pretend like it never happened, and just harbor bitterness in your very soul. Oh, wait, he doesn't say that either. What does he say? He says, if a brother or sister sins against you, go, point out their fault just between the two of you, and if they listen, you've won your brother over. Sounds simple, right? But I don't know about you, but I have been so guilty of doing the former, gossiping, blowing up when I have a disagreeable situation, and that's my move I make, or just completely stuffing it when I get scared. And so all of us, I think when we're unhealthy, we have some natural polarity tendencies in us. And so a lot of us, we learn conflict from those we are around. The way we grew up, the way we are raised, that coupled with our personality bent really affects the way we talk to one another. And so when you see Jesus say something like this, it sounds so simple and you can just keep on reading. But if you pause for a moment and you think, wow, what do I do? I put on a different jersey, or I take my jersey off. And so we naturally have these tendencies. In fact, by show of hand, this is a safe place to be able to communicate where you're at in your spiritual journey, okay? Or relationship journey of any kind. I want you to say, if you're a natural blow-up person, when you have a disagreeable situation, how many of you are a blow-up person? You just kind of, like you let it out, okay? Two of you. Perfect. Well, great. You're in good company. I'm a natural blow-up person. Okay, we got some other people here. There it is. Okay, yep, that's right. The rest of you are liars. Perfect. Okay. Wonderful. Now, how many of you, by nature, would you say you're a stuffer? It's like you don't really talk about it. Stuffers are funny. They're like, hi. It's like, a lot of the blow-up people are like, yep, that's me. What's up? Stuffing is tough, right? You don't have your personality isn't to be like just attack somebody. It's to actually retract, hold everything in. And oftentimes stuffers, you look really great on the outside, but over time, it starts to build. You know what I'm talking about? And one day you trip over a leaf and boom, then you explode. And all of us blow-up people are like, somebody needs to see a psychiatrist, right? Because it's all coming out and there's so much stress. But friends, I believe you and I can do better. There's an incredible verse in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 3. The Apostle Paul, he says this. He says to make every effort, which means relationships take work, which means great relationships, great friendships, great business partnerships, great romantic relationships don't happen through osmosis. It takes intentionality, doesn't it? So he says, make every effort to keep the unity, there's that word that's so beautiful, of the Spirit through the bond of peace. I actually believe that conflict is an opportunity for unity. That when you actually have a disagreeable situation, you can have a move that you can make that will change the game in your relationship when you choose to first put on the same jersey. When you're in a disagreeable conflict, you can say, hey, what jersey am I wearing? Am I on the same team? Because it will change everything. And so what we're going to do today is I'm going to give you a tool that is so practical and so simple that you can use in any relationship, no matter where you're at. And no matter where you're at in your spiritual journey today, whether you consider yourself to be a Christian or not, or you're kicking the tires of Christianity around, this is something that all of us can begin to apply today, and it will change your relationships, and it comes from the heart of God. And so what we're going to do is there's two parts. The first part is the science behind communication, and something we're going to learn as the communication station. Let me hear you say communication station. Perfect. That's part one. I'm going to unpack that to you. And then part two, we're going to get into the art of communication. It's 7 ways to win together when you put on the same jersey that will change the game of your relationships. And so let's start with part one, okay? Part one, it's called the communication station. When you have a disagreeable conflict with somebody, you do not have to look any further than your own hand, because the answer to your issue is located on the palm of your hand. In fact, I got a picture here for you, and if you got notes, you can take those out. In fact, you can see the hand actually in your notes. And so the first section here is the palm, and the palm represents an issue. Pick any issue. I'll give you an example. You said you're going to come home at 5, but instead the door opened up at 7. All right? Just what happened. This is the issue, okay? Now, the very first thing you do when it comes to a disagreeable situation or a conflict or an issue, or maybe it's not a blow-up, kick-down fight, it's just maybe an issue. You look at your pinky. The pinky represents the facts. Let me hear you say facts. Facts. That's actually what happened. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you taste, touch, smell? It's your 5 senses. It's the only objective piece on this entire station. All the rest is subjective. Are you with me? And so this is actually what happened. You said you're going to come home at 5, but instead the door opened up at 7. That's when you walk through the door. Now, to be human is to interpret, which means we go from the pinky to the ring finger. The ring finger is about interpretation. It's our beliefs, which is why you put a ring on it when you're married, because it's the things you commit to. Those are your beliefs, your interpretations, your conclusions. Now, just for a moment, why don't you look at your neighbor, or if you're by yourself, you can sit there and process it on your own. When you saw the fact, you said you're going to come home at 5, but instead you walked through the door at 7. What's your knee-jerk belief statement, ring finger? Go ahead and tell your neighbor, go. All right, how many of you, by show of hands, you went negative? Your belief statement was to assume the worst. Yes, 3 of us, and the rest of us, again, are liars. This is great. Okay, right? You're like, you no good son of a beep. I can't believe you did that. I know I'm a Christian, but I shouldn't be one right now. Like the things we say behind closed doors. Oh my goodness, right? It's like we start thinking this, and these stuffers, you're not saying it out loud. You're just saying it in your head, right? You're driving down the road, and you are having stories in your head that are just going nuts about how you're going to tell your boss off and how this happened with your coworker or your friend or whatever happened in your relationship. And so, right, we have these beliefs, right? Now, how many of you, by show of hands, were like, no, they weren't bad or whatever. They were just helping grandma across the street, right? They were helping her change her tire. That's why he was 2 hours late. How many of you were like this way? You believe the best in them. Okay, nobody. Perfect. Okay, now we're being honest. I like it. All right, this is good. So this is when it comes to communication, you start with the facts, and then you have the beliefs about those facts. And then the next finger. What's that finger? This is your emotions. This is your feelings. Tell me that's not an emotional finger, right? As you drive down I-25 telling everybody they're number one, right? Your emotions, our emotions are an adjective that describe an emotion, a feeling, and our emotions are so good because while our beliefs connect our head, our emotions connect our hearts. And when you go into a relationship with anybody, you want to be able to connect your head and your heart, and your feelings are very good to be able to communicate and talk about because it helps connect us to our head. Now, some of us, our emotions take over our life and make us either blow up or run away completely, right? And we take off that jersey. And so emotions, I always say, make great servants but poor masters. Emotions are amazing to be able to have in the passenger seat with you, but not in the driver's seat. Are you with me? And so this is very, very important when it comes to emotions. And now, when you have emotions, it moves us in a given specific issue when you talk through with a person. This is literally science. Like research from the University of Minnesota in 1970 came up with this stuff. I just put it in a package in a way that's actually creative and fun. But here's the deal. The next part, the pointer finger, are your desires, right? Your desires are the things you point to and want, right? And now here's the deal. This has 3 parts. What do I want for you? What do I want for me? And what do I want for us? Like, are my desires or even expectations, are they different from one another? Like, is it okay for me to come home 2 hours after I said I would, but it's not okay for you? Like, is there a double standard when it comes to a situation? And on top of that, there's a nuance between expectation and desire. Do you know the difference? It's nuanced, but it's important. A desire is a want, a wish. Wouldn't it be nice if? But an expectation is an ought. You need to have that happen. Expectations are tied to justice. They're tied to our sense of right and wrong. They're tied to our worldview of what should be. So get this, when it comes back to emotions, what emotions do you experience when you have an unmet desire? Anybody know? When you have an unmet desire, you're sad, you're disappointed. But what emotion comes over you when you have an unmet expectation? Anger. 100% of the time, whenever you're angry, you can pause and ask, I'm really pissed off right now. What is my expectation? Have I communicated my expectation to my business partner, to my friend, to my spouse, to my boyfriend or girlfriend? Have I even shared that? Is my expectation reasonable? Is it a double standard? You can actually pause and ask yourself these questions, and it's so, so powerful in the process of communication. And the last is your thumb. The thumb is the thing that separates us from the majority of the animal kingdom. And allows us to do so many things and hold so many things, right? Our thumb represents our next steps. It's the action steps, okay, of what you're going to do in a given issue. I'll give you an example. When Sarah and I, my wife, when we were first married, we got invited to a party. We were married for about 3 months. I'll never forget this. And we showed up at the party at 8, and 2 hours later, she came to me and she said, Matt, sweetie, I'm ready to go home. And I looked at her like she was cray-cray. I'm thinking, what are you talking about, babe? The party just got started. And she was like, yeah, I know, but I'm ready to go. Like, I'm tired. And I said, no. Like, I want to stay till at least midnight. She was like, well, I'm ready to go now. She's a little bit introverted. I'm a little bit extroverted. And I powered up, and we didn't go home till midnight. And then she beat me. No, I'm just kidding. But here's what did happen. We argued the entire way home, not just on that night, but for days on end. You ever notice how sometimes some of the smallest disagreeable situation can metastasize into the biggest conflicts over time? What is that? Well, this is the heart of communication. We never actually get even to like how are we going to work as a team. And this is the part within communication that is so much fun when you start with the mindset of wearing the same jersey, because again, friends, when you wear the same jersey, it has a profound effect on the way you play the game. And when you do this, fast forward now, 2 weeks later, Sarah and I get invited to another party. Oh, we got smart this time. Before we went into that party, we got smart, and we were able to circumvent a conflict before it even started because we got on the same team. And I said, hey, sweetie, what are your expectations? What are your desires for our party? She was like, well, I'd like to leave at 10. The party starts at 8. And I was like, I'm glad I asked because I would like to leave at 12. And we started saying, well, what are some solutions that we could come up with? And we created a list of like 10 things. So many people stop at one thing. Well, I just want to do this. And then the other person pushes back because you have a different jersey, right? And you're like, I don't want to do that. And then it's just like, you can get creative, though, of what are some possible solutions. So on one party, we actually took 2 cars. It's 5 minutes away. See you there. Love you. Bye. On another party, it was further away. She said she wanted to leave at 10. I wanted to leave at midnight. We left at 11. We compromised, right? And we bent around for one another. And so it's so amazing. And this is the part of the communication station that gets so much fun. And you start to win together. Right? When you put on a different jersey, what are your tactics? You keep a proverbial file cabinet, you keep score against, right? You're passive aggressive, you're manipulative, you use absolute language. I mean, the arsenal of things that we do when we put on a different jersey is crazy. But when you put on the same jersey, what do? You pass the ball. You know one of the greatest ways to pass the ball when it comes to any relationship? Ask questions. Be a student rather than a teacher. Invite them. It is so easy to assume that we think we know what's going on, but if we can just pause and say, hey, what do you desire? What do you want? And you be a good teammate and you ask questions rather than assume things, it is incredible how you will be able to circumvent conflict before it even happens. I have seen so many business relationships. I have worked with so many CEOs and CFOs at each other's throats because of the way that they will interact, and they have no idea how to communicate, and it starts with just one tiny thing, and then that thing grows, and you are enemies, and you continue to go in your respective sides. And I don't care where you're at in your spiritual journey, these are things that we do. But what's so powerful is that I think God gives us a blueprint of being able to have to say, you know what, sometimes, we can choose to operate in fear or love. Out of life, those are the 2 decisions we can make. You can operate things out of fear. When you do that, you preserve yourself, you protect yourself, you guard your heart in a way that create walls. Some of us do that, right? We wall off. And there is an incredible opportunity where God says, hey, you can step into love. And sometimes when you're at the end of your rope and loving someone, it's the beginning of his, isn't it? It's an incredible opportunity. So what I want to do in part 1 here is I want to stop just for a moment, and I want to invite you to answer a couple of questions. And now I'm going to move on pretty fast, so you don't have to necessarily answer all of these right now. You can take these home. If you're watching online, you can do that as well. Take these home and process, or even pause this if you're watching online, and answer this with your spouse or your friend or yourself. Here's the first question, okay? You can write down in your notes and answer. The first one is this: what is my natural starting point when it comes to conflict? Are you a natural blow-up person, or are you a natural stuffer by nature? Right? When you're unhealthy, what do you do? And number 2, what triggers hijack your emotions when it comes to a given conflict? Like, do you find patterns in your life? Maybe it's a trigger could be like after 9 o'clock, I just keep having these conversations with my spouse, and I'm so upset. It could be, every time my boss says that to me that way, it creates the trigger. Every time my friend tends to assume things, it creates a trigger. Like, what are your triggers that hijack your emotions? Being a student of yourself is crucial so that you can help get down the next road where we're going to go in terms of being able to regulate your emotions and make sure that they are in the passenger seat, not the driver's seat. Are you with me? It's powerful. Number 3 is this: where do I begin in the communication station? Now, here's the cool part. I'm going to put this hand up here. When it comes to communication, do you know that it does not matter where you start on the communication station? It just matters that you start and that you hit every single area. Now, here's the deal. 80% of you men, you naturally start with the facts and what you believe about those facts, right? This is why 80% of men and women actually do this. 80% of women start with their emotions, and what they want or what they expect, all right? That's a natural starting point. It doesn't matter where you start, it just matters that you start. And this is why so many breakdowns happen between genders in all kinds of relationships, because 80% of men will look at a woman and be like, why are you so emotional? And then the woman will look back and be like, why are you trying to fix me? I just want you to listen. And the guy's like, I don't get it. Right? Are you with me, guys? You know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's because our starting point within the communication station is different. And so what happens is, I don't know about you, but ask yourself, where do you start on the communication station? And do you ever even allow yourself to go to the other parts where you're naturally weak? Like men, do you even go to your feelings or your desires? Women, do you even talk about the facts or your beliefs? Are you able to create rational conversations? Right? And what's so great about helping each other as teammates is you can start at your natural point and then say, oh, okay, tell me more about that. Well, tell me about your feelings. Tell me about your desires. Tell me, I'd love to hear more about your beliefs. Unpack that for me. What actually happened? This is a game changer. It's simple, and yet it's profound. And that's why it's part one. And this is the starting point here, okay? Everybody with me? You can now take that communication station with you wherever you go. Now, let's move on to part two. Are you guys ready for part two? Part two is the art. If that was the science of communication, this is the art of communication. And this has to do, it's called the 7 ways to win together. Let me hear you say 7 ways to win. Come on, 7 ways to win. Number 1 is this: think before you speak. You said you're going to come home at 5, but it said the door came up at 7. Oh, pause. And just think, if you're a natural blow-up person, you're going to see like you're going to start letting it have them, right? You're going to be like, why in the world? And yet, just pause, think. If you're a stuffer, you maybe want to just shut down or defer or be an obliger or whatever. It's like, no. I need to actually think about it. I need to communicate my desires, my wishes, how I'm heard, those kind of things. This is very, very important. Pray first. Maybe pause and think, God, how could I see my spouse, my business partner, my friend the way that you do? Like, help me have the eyes to see. And we know what's so great about pausing? For some of you, it might be 3 seconds. For others of you, it might be 30 minutes or 3 hours because you're really heated, right? When you pause, what you do is you allow yourself to cool down and not let your emotions hijack you. You allow yourself then to prepare your heart, prepare your words, prepare a time, and to prepare the right place. You ever been into a party and you're like, all of a sudden you see this other partner or friends or whatever just like start going at it, and you're like, this is not the time or place to be having this conversation, but there they go, right? Preparing a place and time is huge. And men, especially if you're going to interact with a woman, it is incredible to make sure that the place is a safe place. Safety is key when it comes to relationships. And it doesn't matter if it's in a business context. You don't just say it in front of all the other employees. You create a private room. And you have these conversations face to face, not in a text message, right? Not in a crazy long email. You ever done that? You sent the email and then you hit it and you're like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? Right? Wasn't okay. Pause before you send the email, okay? How are you going to tell them off? Pause before you're going to send the text message. Because text messages, you don't get tone and pitch. You don't get anything else. You know that only 7% of communication is verbal? 38% of communication is tone and pitch. How you say what you say is actually more important than what you say. Hey, you doing? I'm good. How you doing? Fine. It's like, oh my gosh, like, wow, I said I'm fine, but it's like my tone and pitch matters, right? And so here's the deal. 55% of communication is nonverbal. So most of communication is actually how you present yourself, which is why a text message is only verbal. And so it leaves room for interpretation, which for most of us, we tend to, what we did with the belief stuff, is go negative, right? This is why pausing is so powerful. It's why it's number 1, because it's the most important one. That's number 1. Number 2 is this: I go first. And it has to do with saying these 2 words: I'm sorry. There, I said it. Jesus says some things to me sometimes that I really don't like. You ever read the Bible and you're like, I don't like that. That doesn't sit right with me. Jesus says this. He says in Matthew chapter 7, verse 5, he talks about 2 guys having a conflict. And he says, hey, you know what? Before you go and take the speck out of your brother's eye, Matthew chapter 7, verse 5, he says, first go and take the plank out of your own eye, then perhaps you'll be able to see clearly to see your brother's situation. And you're like, I look at that and I'm like, no, Jesus, they're the ones who have the plank. I'm the one who has the speck. It's not my issue. You said you're going to come home at 5, but instead you walked through the door at 7. You know what? Like, maybe I didn't respond in the best way, but you know what? Like, if we're going to get through this, like, it's on you. Bring it, sister. Right? Like, if we're going to get through this disagreeable situation, it's your move, not my move. It's your time to be able to do this. And so we feel this tension, and so we we keep score because we're wearing a different jersey, and we're like, you're 90% at fault, I'm only 10% at fault, so if we're going to be able to actually get through this, you got to start. But Jesus doesn't do that at all. He spins things on its head because it creates so much tension in my soul and in our soul of how to actually have great conversations in whatever relationship context it is. I go first. I enter with vulnerability. That is so hard, isn't it? To be able to say those words, I'm sorry. But you know what does it? 9 times out of 10, vulnerability breeds vulnerability. The other person knows what they did wrong. And when you start with your stuff, it creates a platform for them to be able to own it as well. But there's a caveat. When you say I'm sorry, may the word but never be on the heels on the apology. You know, I'm really sorry I acted that way, but I wouldn't have done that if you, right? When you say but on the heels of an apology, what does it do? It cancels it. It nullifies the entire apology, exactly, right? Or, I'm sorry you can't handle your stuff, right? Wait, is that an apology? I don't know, right? Say, I'm sorry I did this, not I'm sorry you. Or some of you who are stuffers, you say, I'm sorry as a way that you will choose to lose in order for them to win so that you can try to maintain harmony back in the relationship. But the problem is this, it's false harmony, and everybody feels it. So you say, I'm sorry to end the conversation. Okay, I'm sorry. You don't know why you're sorry. You don't name you're sorry. You just say, I'm sorry so that you'll be done, right? Stuffers, are you with me? And so to be able to say, I'm sorry, but know why you're saying you're sorry is so, so crucial when it comes to I go first. That's number 2. Number 3 is this, and it's so powerful. I call it enter with ignorance. You know, I remember my very first week of marriage. Sarah and I got back from our honeymoon. We had premarital coaching. And in our premarital coaching, we talked about roles. And Sarah and I decided, hey, Sarah's going to do the cooking, and I'm going to do the cleaning, and I'll do the dishes, okay? So great. That was our decision that we made. Well, fast forward now. We're now married. It's been 7 days after our honeymoon, and we looked, and literally all the dishes were piled up, like literally all of them. And Sarah, she walked over to me, and she did something so profound. She said, hey, honey, she passed the ball like a good teammate. She said, hey, could you help me understand? I remember us having a conversation about, I was going to do the cleaning and you're going to do or I was going to do the cooking, you're going to do the cleaning, but I see here that literally, like, since data is like, the dishes are piled up. Could you help me understand, did I miss something or anything like that? And it was so powerful because you know what? I'm a natural blow-up person. And so if she would have come to me and she was like, you no good, rotten son of a beep, I can't believe you did this. It's only been 7 days in our marriage. What's it going to look like 7 years from now? She would have been right and yet wrong at the top of her voice. It is amazing how oftentimes we think we know the answer because when it comes to the ring finger, we think we understand. Now, 90% of the time, maybe you are right, but it doesn't help. There's 3 things when it comes to the ring finger, which happens to be beliefs. You're either totally right, which of course we think we're right, otherwise why would we have that belief? We're totally wrong, or we're somewhere in between, or we don't have all the facts. And so what Sarah did was so powerful. She entered with ignorance rather than accusation. It is amazing how we assume, and out of our assumptions, we don't pass the ball, we don't ask a question, we just mudsling. We mudsling our boss, we mudsling our coworker, we mudsling our friend, right? And then all of a sudden you start gossiping, right? What is that, right? It's like this thing that this James talks about it, right? It's this spark, and it creates an entire flame of fire going out. And so what's so crucial for us is to be able to enter with ignorance. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, Pastor Keith, he talked about this. He said, listen, in life, you will have issues, and there will be a gap between what you expect and what you experience. And when there's a gap between what you expect and what you experience, you have a decision. It's your move. You can either A, assume the worst, or B, believe the best. And we've already established what 90% of us in this room do, don't right? We tend to assume the worst, right? And so it doesn't help. So there is an element to say, I will choose to believe the best. And if I can't choose to believe the best, I will have a conversation. But when I have a conversation, I will enter with ignorance as opposed to accusation. Do you know what this does? This whole passing the ball, asking questions. You're a student rather than a teacher. There's curiosity, and curiosity makes life fun, and the engine of curiosity is questions. And when you do this, every single time you take these moves of communication, you build trust. Trust is the currency of relationship. If you have no trust, you have no relationship. People are like bank accounts. And every single time you make a move of progression in any of these ways, you are depositing trust. My goal for all of us is that we got a trust fund that is huge, because you're going to be human and you're going to make mistakes, and it's okay to do that. But when you make those mistakes, you make a withdrawal from that other person, but you do that too many times and you go negative in your account. But you keep making deposits and you can make a withdrawal, but the other person could say, you know what? I really do see that they're just stressed, or they got a hard time, and I'm able to trade places and see like they didn't mean that, and you're okay. It's incredible. That's why entering with ignorance is such a powerful starting point and a tool that you can use. That's number 3. Number 4 is this: one issue at a time. You ever been at work in a meeting, or you've been in a conflict with a friend or spouse or something like that, and you start with one conversation, and before you know it, you got like 5 or 6 on the table, and none of them have been resolved, and you're more stressed afterwards than when you started? Anybody ever been there, right? It's like, hey, could you do the dishes? Well, I couldn't do the dishes because, you were supposed to take out the dog, but you didn't take out the dog, and I stepped out on dog poop this morning when I got up, and now I have to clean the carpet and my shoe and my sock and the whole thing, and then I have to go do more laundry, which is why I couldn't do that. Speaking of laundry, do you know you haven't done the laundry in months? It's like, whoa, what just happened? 4 issues, 5 seconds. And so what happens is this. Now, oftentimes, issues are in fact complex. And so to be human is to be like an onion, which means there are layers to us. And so sometimes an issue really isn't the issue. There's something else going on under the surface. There's a core fear. There's something else going on. So you're talking about dishes, but really there's something bigger. It's so small, but it's actually really big. And so what you do in a relationship is, before you go to the next layer or the next conversation, you make sure that both of you are able to bring each other there together. That's why one issue at a time is so powerful. That's number 4. Number 5 is this. I call it a grace-truth sandwich. This is a game changer. Grace is your bread. Truth is your meat. Grace on top, baby. Now, here's the deal. All of us tend to naturally be one of two things. We're either a natural truth teller, or you're a natural grace giver. How many of you, by show of hands, are natural truth tellers? All right, okay? Hey, big time extreme truth tellers be like, it's not my problem if you can't handle the stuff. I'm just telling the truth. People are like, yeah, but you don't have to be mean. Right? And then there's natural grace givers, and it's like grace givers are like, sometimes you try to communicate without communicating, and you hope that maybe they'll pick up the signs and the pieces. And the truth teller is like, I'm sorry, what are you trying to say to me? And it's like, well, you kind of, it's okay, but it could have been nice. And it's like, just shoot straight. Like, tell me what's going on. But here's the deal. But do it in a way that's sensitive. I'll give you an example. I'll never forget. I was 23 years old. I had my first speaking event. I was speaking in front of thousands of people. And my boss said, hey, Matt, here's this big event. I want you to go speak. And I was like, oh, my gosh, I get to speak. This is amazing. And so I get to go up, and I do the talk. And the next day, we have coffee. And he says, hey, Matt, how did you think it went? And I was like, well, no big deal. Just knocked it out of the park, And then he said, hey, Matt, I want you to know I value you so much. He started with grace. And he said, I value you. You're a young guy. I think you had a ton of potential. I love you. I love having you on staff. This is so incredible. However, would it be okay if I gave you a couple of pointers? And I said, sure, absolutely. And he goes into the truth. And he said, well, there's 2 issues that I want you to grow in. Number 1, you were off vision. And he began to unpack what he meant by being off vision. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm off vision of the corporation. And number 2, he said, you spoke over people's heads. He said, you use language that we use in staff meetings, but you never contextualized that language to your audience, and so they had no idea what you were saying. And you were just trying to act smart and compensating for being 23 years old. Oh my gosh. Now, have you ever been on the receiving end of a conflict? It's not fun. Now, guess what I'm hearing? As he's saying this, guess what I'm hearing? I'm having stories going on in my head Stories like this: Matt, I'm thinking he's saying this. You suck. Matt, you should quit. Matt, you should never speak publicly again. Oops, sorry, everybody. Matt, you should never do this again. And now what's so powerful is he didn't just stop there. He ended with grace. And he said, it was almost like he was reading my mind. He said, Matt, what I don't want you to hear is that you're a bad communicator, that I would never give you an opportunity again, that I would never help you down this road, that you are such a gifted guy, and I want to continue to give you opportunities. And failing is okay. I want you to fail forward. At the end of that conversation, I walked out that day, and I had two decisions to make. I could either choose to believe the story he told me or the story going on inside my head. But because we had trust, and he had made so many deposits, I was able to get out of my head and trust him and be able to receive criticism. He wasn't being critical. He was giving criticism. And he asked permission to do so. That's a key thing, too. Ask permission. Don't just go into it. You know what your problem is? What, did I ask you? No, I didn't. You got to ask permission, right? Grace through sandwich, ask permission. That's number 5. Number 6 is this. Abstain from forms of contempt. Do you know what contempt is? Contempt is way beyond you're angry, you're bitter, you're frustrated, you're upset. Contempt is when you get to the place where you say, you could blow up or stuff it. You could put on a different jersey or take the jersey off. Either way, I don't care because we're done. How in the world does anybody get there? The average divorce rate is 55% for first-time marriages, 67% for second marriages. So many business relationships go from like, we're going to make millions to, I hate your stinking guts, we're done. Friendships who have been started when they were 12, suddenly something happened and they were done. Like, how does that happen, right? And there's a pathway of contempt. There's an on-ramp. There's roads to contempt, things to avoid. So if you want to avoid contempt, which Malcolm Gladwell, New York Times bestseller, several years ago wrote a book called Blink. And he said they hooked married couples up to electrodes, and they said, talk about the biggest tension of your relationship, go. And within a blink of an eye, they would be able to tell within 99% accuracy who would be divorced within 5 years. You know what they looked for? Contempt. That's the Blink thing. Now, here's the on-roads to contempt. You can write this down. Blame shifting. It's not my fault. I never own my stuff. I always blame you. Name calling, straight up name calling. Rolling your eyes. Oh my gosh, yeah. It's such a disrespect thing. Sarcasm. Sarcasm is great. I love being funny and sarcastic and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to conflict, it's like passive aggressive, right? Because every sarcasm is a hint of truth. So when it comes to sarcasm, it's kind of that jab of saying what you want to say without actually saying it, right? That's an on-road to contempt, right? And so using absolute language, that's another one. You are always late. You are never doing the dishes. You are constantly failing your TPS reports. You are never doing, it's like you never respond back to me as a friend, right? Like we have all of these issues that come in a given situation. And so when you use always or never, unless the facts or the pinky literally said, you've never done the dishes, like, okay, well then you can say it. But otherwise, those are fighting words for you to be able to try to keep score and win the argument. See how it all starts with a mindset? You could have all these tools of 7 ways to win together, and they won't do a thing if you don't start here. That's huge. That's number 6. Number 7 is this. The last one is this. I call it mirror sharing. You know what mirror sharing is? Mirror sharing is less about talking and more about listening. Mirror sharing is the thing where you summarize what you think you heard the other person say. So what I'm hearing you say is, and then complete the sentence. Because to be human is to interpret, but again, we don't always interpret even words the same way. I'll give you an example, okay? One phrase can mean 2 different things for 2 different people. You ready? I have nothing to wear. There's the phrase. What's it mean? Well, for a woman, for 90% of women, it means I got nothing new to wear or nothing I want to wear. But for 90% of men, it means I literally have no clean underwear. Right? So you can easily say a statement and mean different things. And so mirror sharing slows down. Sometimes you got to slow down in order to speed up within a given conversation, and that is powerful, okay? So my last question for you is simply this. Ask yourself, out of the 7 ways to win together, what is just one that you could begin to apply today, and you could see a game-changing relationship happen at work, at home, and in your friendships? I guarantee you that if you do even one of these things, you'll start seeing tangible change in your relationships. And you know what's so beautiful? I love when I look at the gospel, when I look at the sum, center, and total of Christianity, of what a relationship with God even looks like. He gives us a blueprint of that. How God believes the best in you and I. How God steps into human history with a grace-truth sandwich. And he says, you are my beloved, and I have created you for a personal relationship with me. You are made in my image, and you will get to know who you are. And when you get to know who I am, grace. But there's a problem. Truth. Your sin, my sin, our stuff that we did to try to go our own independent way from God separates us. It's not God separating himself from us. It's our own sin and stuff that separates us from him. And that separation creates a gap so cataclysmic that no matter what you do, it's never going to be good enough to be able to get back into right relationship with God. And so God, in grace, sends Jesus stepping into human history as a man like us, but unlike us, the only one without sin, and says, I love you so much, I will take that sin, that shame, that death that sin requires, and pay it for you. I don't know about you, but I am blown away by that kind of act, which in turn for me builds all kinds of trust. And trust is the currency of relationship. And it's changed my life. And if I don't know about you, where you're at in your spiritual journey, but if you've never made a decision to be able to follow God, God is not angry. God is not mad at you. God is absolutely head over heels in love with you and wants to commune with you. Not build a religion with you. He wants to build relationships, because great relationships are what make life rich. But friends, it's your move. He has stepped out and made a move to extend his hand of grace to us to be able to enter into relationship. But now, with like any relationship, you can't force love. It's an opportunity and a choice for you to be able to make on your own. And so that, if you've never made that decision, I just want to pray with you right now to begin that journey. And then we have all kinds of great connections and resources for you here to be able to start that journey. And so I just want to have everybody close their eyes and bow their heads, and we're just going to pray and receive God into our life. And for those of you who are Christians, I have a next step for you as well. But God, thank you. Thank you for your grace, truth sandwich. Thank you for the way that you believe the best as opposed to assume the worst. Thank you that you never give up and that you're always putting on the same jerseys, recognizing and communicating us throughout your entire Bible that you want to be on the same team with us. And God, I invite those who have never done that to do that right now by simply saying, God, I accept that invitation to become a child of you, to enter into a relationship with you, God. And God, we thank you for those who make that decision today. And for those of us who have already made that decision, God, some of us are tired. Some of us have been hijacked by bad relationship after broken marriage, after failed relationships. And we're wondering if this whole thing is even worth it. And God, I pray that you would just inspire us and breathe life back into our lungs and into our bones, that this stuff is always worth it, because relationships are what's always worth it. And so God, we love you and we thank you that you're the one who models everything that we're talking about. In Jesus' name, everybody said.